Hi, my name is Oscar Gill. My presentation is going to be on Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was one of America's greatest presidents. He was born in 1746 and died in 1826. Thomas Jefferson is best remembered as the author of the Declaration of Independence, third president of the United States of America, also doubling the American land with the Louisiana Purchase. In the last few years, we've heard about contradiction of being against slavery and yet owning slaves. One has to see through the time period to understand the way they thought the way they did, and to some degree. I'll first talk about Jefferson's thought on political economy, land, liberty, and leisure, and then to slavery. My references are going to be from Robert Merlin's Glorious Cause, and The Radical Politics of Thomas Jefferson by Richard Matthews. And also I'm going to be using the website Thomas Jefferson Foundation, Thomas Jefferson and Slavery. Okay. Thomas Jefferson wrote about liberty, freedom, and property. He wrote, "I am a savage enough to prefer the woods, the wilds, the independence of Monticello to all the brilliant pleasures of this great capital. I shall therefore rejoin myself to my native country with new attachments, with an exaggerated esteem for its advantages. For though there is less wealth, there is more freedom, and more ease and less misery." And he also wrote, "The implication of every man's possessing natural right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with property as merely an instrumental civil right are staggering." Even though there is no natural right to property in his political theory, Jefferson perceives direct relationships between individual freedom, economy, autonomy, and democratic community. Here's where the small independent farmer enters into Jefferson's vision of a good life. Thomas Jefferson wrote that before the establishment of the American states, nothing was known to history but the man of this world, crowded within limits of either small or overcharged and steeped into the vices which the situation generates. A government adapted to such men would one thing be very different one than for the man of these states. Here everyone may have land to labor for himself if he chooses, or preferring the exercise of any other industry, may exact for it such compensation as not only to afford a comfortable subsistence, but wherewith to provide for cessation from labor in old age. Everyone, by his property or by his satisfactory situation, is interested in support of the law and order, and such men safely and advantageously reserve themselves a wholesome control of their affairs and a degree of freedom which he instantly perverted to the demolition and destruction of everything public and private. We see a great mind working here when he wrote this. Now, Christy Dickerson wrote in regards to slavery, which is her title is called Thomas Jefferson and Slavery, where she writes, "Throughout his entire life, Thomas Jefferson was a consistent opponent of slavery, calling it a moral depravity, a hideous blot. He believed that slavery presented the greatest threat to the survival of the new American nation." Quite honestly, from my readings, it doesn't seem like he wanted to have slavery at all. He wanted to start our country fresh. He wanted it to be like a beacon of hope for the world in the sense that everyone had freedom. And without slaves being free, that was a blot on the republic, the new republic. Jefferson also thought that slavery was contradictory to the laws of nature, which he decreed that everyone had a right to personal liberty. These views were radical in a world where unfree labor was the norm. At the time of the American Revolution, Jefferson was actively involved in legislation that he had hoped would result in slavery abolition. Of course, many of the slave owners, leaders that were present during these meetings were very much against the idea of slaves being set free and who would do their labor. It was highly decisive. In fact, we probably would not have had the United Colonies or United States if it had been taken off, although it would have been it would have been in the long run the best thing to do. In 1778, he drafted a Virginia law that prohibited the importation of enslaved Africans. In 1784, he proposed an ordinance that would ban slavery in Northwest Territories, but Jefferson always maintained that the decision to emancipate slaves would have to be a part of the democratic process. Abolition would have been stymied until slave owners consented to free their human property together in a large-scale act of emancipation. Honestly, they worried about what would happen if they let the slaves be free, because they had the Jamaican revolt there, and the Haiti revolt, pardon me, and with so many people dying from the revolt, they were honestly scared, and in that time world, at that time frame, they just didn't see them coexisting together like we do today. To Jefferson, it was anti-democratic and contrary to the principles of the American Revolution for a federal government to enact abolition, or for only a few planters to free their slaves. It was really a vision he saw that once the country was so divided, at a point there would be a big war, and he envisioned that, and he hoped that it would not occur, but I mean, because of divisiveness between the states in regards to slavery, eventually did occur. Thank you very much.